Welcome, everyone. As we were discussing there in chapter 10 and 11 about looking at the old maps, and we're going to do a little bit of that here in a brief pod. These families are important because, as I said, the families come back in prophecy. These names are used as they don't go away, many of them. So you'll see that when you go to the book of Revelation, say, you see the old tribes, the old risen empires mentioned. So it's important for us, and one of the other benefits to studying Jasher is this leaving Babylon and being spread around the firmament of the earth. So, as we know, modern day Babylon's what? Iraq, okay, and Persia is Iran, okay, and that is a relation to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which they flow into the Persian Gulf. So if we want to talk about Persia, the tribe, the old name is Elam. Elam. And next to that we have Arphaxad. Now, there was a king named that. Okay, in the Old Testament. If you take this and you take Javan, the descendants of Japheth, and in Genesis, that's 10, Genesis 10, 2 through 5. And we take Put, and that's the descendants of Ham. Genesis 10, 6 through 20. Lud, descendants of Shem, and that's Genesis 10, 21 through 31. Lydia, a later biblical name. So there we are, harmonizing that with Genesis, of course. And there's other, we're not going to get to all of it. But it's not hard to do, folks. If even some of the bad Bible versions have some decent maps. So if you look at your old map, you look and there's Iraq. And Iraq is where Babylon, where the Tower of Babylon, the great obelisk to the sky, was. So there's a starting point for us as we talk about these families and how they spread. Okay, so you take, for instance, Lud and Lydia, or Javan, and that's on the islands there, and that's the Greeks. If I say Chittim or Kittim, that's the island of Cyprus. Now that's another starting point for us if we want to look around. We get the Mediterranean Sea, and we can see where, on most of these maps, where these families went. Now we have the Hittites there, north of Cyprus. They were well steeped into the mystery school of Babylon. They were known for their giants and their Canaanite religion. Gomer's up there above that in the spreading of the families around the earth, Gomer. And we all, if you look at your lines now, the lines are centered from the where Og ruled there with Mount Hermon. Okay, so that is a fixed line there. We have the Ashkenazis. And another name for them is the Scythians. The Scythians, and that's up, that would be northeast in a good distance from the island of Cyprus. It would be if you go to the Persian Gulf, and you take that where it spills into the Persian Gulf, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and we have Elam, which is the start of Persia. The Ashkenazi would be just northwest, but a good distance up there. Now, there are these Madia or Madai. That's the Medes. Okay? There's lots of these maps out here that will come to life for us if we'll just dive in there, take the old names out of Jasher, and I'm not even really digging in there. If someone wants to dig in there more, or if you'd like for us to dig in there more, we'll be glad to do that. If you take Asher, well, that's the Assyrians, and they're right up there, the Tigris River flowing through there. And you see right there that when it comes to the Persians and the Assyrians and all that, well, these borders changed. One land would conquer the other. So you take that Iraq, it's a long way from Cyprus here, especially in these days. Syria, we have Aram, as we were discussing there in the earlier chapters of Jasher, the Aram, that's Syria. And across the east side of the Great Sea, we have the Philistines, Canaan, the Amorites, okay, and all that. That's modern day Jerusalem through there. That's modern day Tel Aviv, Haifa, Lebanon there on the coast, Syria there on the coast. Again, that's the modern map. Now Put and Mizraim, you're looking at the king of the south there. You're looking at the Egypt. Okay, so now you're going down to the African end of it all, south. So you take this Mediterranean Sea, which is all important here in the old map. We have the Tarshish Mountains there on the north side of the Mediterranean Sea. Now remember, that's where Paul went. In fact, his name, they called him Paul of Tarsus, right? And there is that land, Tarsus. Now this also goes into Turkey, modern day. Turkey, and that's where we had the Turkey was joined to that great throne of Satan, right there in the book of Revelations, there where Satan's throne, his seat is, in Pergamos. And that's right at the border, right at the point where we had highways coming through there. We had all the stairs to the high place, and there was Satan's throne. And it's documented there in the Bible. That throne was picked up in the late 1800s into the early 1900s and moved to Germany for the German Antichrist figure, Hitler, and all that entailed in this great quest to be king of the mountain, king of the world. All right. So when you take that Mediterranean Sea and you look at where the people went, there's Damascus. Well, we're still getting that. We're still getting bombs there, aren't we? There we have the Sea of Galilee. See, all that's in Canaan. The Amorites there, and again, there was a great, just everywhere was there these giants and these worship, these high places, these human sacrifices. Even there in Syria was the Tadmor, or Tadmor, the 666 Tadmor Temple, named after that, where Solomon taxed them. That's in modern Syria, which is this descendants of Aram. You take the Jordan people, and there they are, Canaanites. So that takes all that. That takes all that into these people that migrated there from Babylon. So if you take Iraq, which is the roots of Babylon, right? And it all flows into the Tigris and the Euphrates. They come together, and there it flows into the Persian Gulf. And you have Kuwait there and all that. And this is the peoples that we're talking about. Now, we're not going into overseas because the Lord picked these people up and moved them. As we just read there in Jasher, that's the same thing that's in Genesis. And many times they rerouted these rivers for war. That's outside of the scriptures, but I'm told from people that study the old history that they would get away with rerouting rivers and drying people out. If you don't have water, you don't have life. Human beings cannot survive without good water. Okay, so that's where, Nebuchadnezzar would come here out of Iraq, and now Iraq's right next door to Jordan, Damascus. Okay, so that's all related to this Aram. Now there's some better maps than what I'm looking at here, but I'm letting you know how easy this is for everybody that wants to know more about these sons there and daughters there that spread around the world there in chapter 10. And we talked about getting a map out and looking, and this is how easy it is. You got plenty of these. Even out of the terrible Bible versions, there's some decent maps. Okay? And today, when it comes to Turkey and that great it's a point where all the boat traffic and the rivers come together and all that. And there Satan set his seat there when it come to the traffic of the world. And notice there that where they talked about Tyre. Now Tyre wasn't just the seaport, but there's a great history to that. And that's one of the tribes, one of the names, okay? And it was not just the seaport, but the seaport was where Satan had his throne again. We study that right in the Bible, okay? And it talks about Satan there dwelling where all the traffic of the world is, and the prophecy was it would be cast down again. It would be destroyed, and that it would be made a place to cast nets, and it certainly that happened. There was an old destruction because before Nebuchadnezzar, they say, but we'll start with the destruction after the prophecy about it. And history has it that there was a destruction prior to that. But the prophecy came that Tyre would be destroyed and would be made a place to cast nets. Nebuchadnezzar got that job started. It was a great casting down. However, many of the relative cities around the Middle East there survived. Okay, and then it was built back up using rubble and this great dike out into the ocean. And so there the traffic went crazy again. However, remember, Satan was cast down, and Satan was inhabiting there in Tyre. And the causeway was there where they could just pull it up, block it, and the only way in was with boat. Well, history has it that Alexander the Great got it done. That see how prophecy can be strung out a little bit. We're getting that today with the ram and the he-goat prophecy, which has to do with this old Iraq and Iran. It sure does. And Alexander the Great got it done. And what he did was level that causeway. So all that rubble from the earlier Tyrus is laying under the ocean, and it's a great place to cast nets. And how do I know that? There was a documentary on it, on excavating it, and while they were excavating it, they would build walls and they would drain it, pump it out, and then really be on foot there, on top of the rubble. It was a great reef, and there was people casting nets all around it, and the scientists had no idea, PBS had no idea that this was a great fulfillment of the prophecies in the Old Testament about Tyre. And that's an example, folks, of how we can get these maps out. And even when it's a bad place, it's not a godly area. It's Antichrist area. It's a deviltry area. Yet they pop up on these maps, and we can see where the Bible documents it. And Jasher documents where these families went, so that when it's mentioned during Bible prophecy, we can have in our mind the area. Now, you take like Moab, it's still there, the big square Moab, and it's prophesied to still be there. And they actually keep the name Moab. It's not the garden grove that it was. It was a lush green forest. It's desert mostly today. But that land is there in Bible prophecy. So is Ethiopia. There, that now I'm going down to the south, and that would be put in Mizraim. Mizraim is what? Egypt. Okay, so there you got the roots of that coming away from the Tower of Babel. So that spread down there. And today, modernly, it's the African Union. Sure is. So a lot can be gained by studying these old maps, and especially when you take, well, the boats of Chittim, the boats of Chittim. Now, Chittim didn't just stay there right on Cyprus, the island. I've heard different where that spread out also. So you have these boats, and there's well renowned in boats. Well, why? Well, look at the island. Everything had to be shipped in and out by boat. Cyprus was also known for the mystery religions, the Nephilim and Rephaim religions there. Okay, so anyway, that's a little glimpse at what we can do without much study. We just have an inquiring mind. We can get the map of the nations of Genesis easily. It's not hard to do. So that's a little example of what can be done. And if you want us to go into detail, more details with more maps and all that, if that would help someone out there, just send us an email. Our
email is Bible Prophecy.
Our email, Bible Prophecy
16
at
yahoo.com.
And if you would like us to go further into the maps and discuss it and relate it to the history, we'll be glad to do that. But here, we're going to go on. We're going to go on with our study into the book of Jasher here as promised. So we're going to pick things up right there in chapter 12. So we thought we'd give you a little taste of this, folks. I hope you are interested, and send us an email of what you find out and what your take on the spreading of the families from Babylon and the peoples and towns that were created, because there's a lot more to it than what we just went into here. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.